Overpaying for anything sucks, especially socks, so why pay $45 for a single pair of grip socks when you can spend less than half? Pure Grip Socks Pro feature our best materials for optimal fit, moisture wicking, and performance at a fair price, just $16.99 a pair at puregripsocks.com.
If you've been watching some of my more recent reviews, then you might have noticed that I haven't been overly impressed with a lot of the more budget-friendly options from Adidas. Well, that changes today with these boots right here. Ladies and gentlemen, say hello to the brand new Adidas Copa Gloro 2023, with the Gloro series kind of coming and going within the Adidas brand over the last 6 or 7 years now, but it's back this time, again offering that kind of classic football boot fit, feel, and general style with a full leather upper, a sole plate and stud pattern that we have seen on a past Gloro model, and a very affordable price tag of just $100 US. With this boot realistically being designed for somebody that's looking for a no-nonsense football boot experience, its main competition being the Nike Premier 3, which does retail for $10 more at $110, and I guess perhaps a little bit less so the New Balance 442 version 2 Pro, which retails for $130, all in the same category, these being the least expensive. So how do they stack up? We're gonna discuss exactly that in today's video as we break down everything that you need to know about the new Copa Gloro 2023, and of course take a look at how they fit and feel on feet. So if you're interested in learning more, please stick around, and if you are interested in a pair for yourself, you can pick them up below their normal retail price by way of some exclusive SR4U coupon codes by checking out the first link down below. And as always, if you guys enjoy these brutally honest reviews, perhaps want to see more videos of less expensive football boot options, drop a like on the video and make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't already so you don't miss out on my reviews of all the latest football boots of 2023. Now, if you're just trying to make a simple apples to apples comparison, I think it's easy to see that this is a leather upper with a conical stud pattern and in general a very straightforward and traditional design concept, where meaning in comparison to the Premier 3 and the New Balance 442, both football boots with a very similar design concept, similar materials but higher price tags, why would you buy those over these? And this is where I think your preconceived ideas in regards to what makes a good quality football boot comes into play, because the Copa Gloro 2023 is a cow leather upper, whereas the Premier 3 and the New Balance 442 both feature kangaroo leather uppers. But here's the thing, even though kangaroo leather has been promoted as the best of the best as far as leather quality is concerned, the cow leather on the Copa Gloro, I would argue, is just as soft as the other two boots on the market. I think the New Balance does maybe edge it a little bit in terms of overall quality. It does feel that little bit nicer, but compared to the Nike Premier 3, this definitely has a little bit of a thicker, more padded feel, but in general, I actually prefer the feel of this cow leather upper over that of the Nike Premier. In other words, not all types of leather are equal. Just because it's branded as kangaroo leather doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be better than all cow leather, because I'd make an argument that the slightly softer, more padded feel to this cow leather upper on the Copa Gloro does feel more premium than that of the thinner, less padded kangaroo leather on the Nike Premier 3. So again, it does depend on what you're looking for. Personal preference is going to play a huge factor in what you might like more, but just because this is cow leather does not make it inferior in quality compared to the other two. And if it means that they can bring the price down, I think that is very much a welcome decision. Nonetheless, what I like about the Copa Gloro 2023 is that the cow leather does span pretty much the entire upper, even through to the forefoot and midfoot area. You're gonna find that the heel does have a synthetic piece at the back, which ultimately doesn't matter. And even the fold over flap tongue, the top piece is leather. However, the main body of the tongue, unfortunately, is synthetic. That's the one thing that I would change, but in general, this leather feels soft, it's padded. It is definitely a little bit more padded through the forefoot area where you have all the stitching, where the midfoot is a little bit thinner, but in terms of consistency of touch, I think this really feels like a nice pair of leather football boots, and when you consider the $100 price tag, less with some coupon codes, they feel much better than most football boots in this price range. And it's a little thing, but I'm gonna mention it anyways, the Adidas stripes here on the midfoot that you have on both the lateral and medial side, but mainly here on the inside of the foot, you can see they have this kind of line texturing to them, and being that it is made from a textured synthetic material, it does provide some additional grip on the ball in this area of the foot that a normal smooth leather football boot typically wouldn't have. I wouldn't call it sticky by any means, but it is some added texture that you would not get on the other two options that we're talking about in this video. And then there's what's happening across the top of the foot, which I think is going to be the most controversial aspect of this football boot. However, you do have some options. You'll notice that there's a large fold-over flap tongue that covers just about the entire lacing system. It reminds me a lot of Ronaldinho's first signature model with Nike, and it even has the elastic strap to hold it down in place, kind of like a pair of classic Predators, which I really do like. The styling of the tongue, I can't say I'm on board with. I like the detail of the stitching to match what's happening in the forefoot. However, it just looks really, really chunky. And if you look from the side here where the Adidas logo is, they added even more foam at that bottom half of the tongue. So from a protection standpoint, if you got stepped on right here with this tongue in place on your foot, that's a significant amount of material for added protection. However, from a touch perspective, it does feel on the bulky side. However, you're in luck because Adidas have noted that, and kind of similar to what you see on the Nike Premier 3, I don't want to say that they've copied Nike because I don't think the Premier 3 is the first boot to do this, but you can see there's a little scissor symbol as well as a line on where you should cut if you don't want this big fold over flap tongue, which for me personally, given the option of tongue or no tongue, I just think that this football boot feels significantly better without this extra bulk across the top of your foot. I know lace covers were always presented as an element for the sake of control because it's covering up the laces, but realistically, this is adding a ton of extra bulk that unless you just want the protection or just love the way that it looks and it doesn't really bother you, I don't think it's adding anything to the experience. I feel like the touch is significantly better without it. And you can see when the tongue is lifted up, you have a nice deep central lacing system and a standalone tongue, a standard traditional U-throat construction. Again, my only complaint here would be that the body of the tongue itself isn't actually made from leather, which isn't really a deal breaker. It's the same situation on the Nike Premier 3, and in general, it feels fine. And maybe this is a bit of a weird comparison to make, but when the tongue is removed from this football boot and you just look at the structure of the upper and the way the stitching pattern goes, this really does feel like it's almost been modeled off of the custom variation of the 11 Pro that Toni Kroos has been wearing for, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 years now. I'm sure his are better quality, but this variation of the Copa Gloro is probably the closest thing to that design that we've ever had available at a retail level since those custom variations became a thing. Moving to the rear, you're gonna find that the Gloros do maintain a low cut construction as you'd expect from a football boot of this type, an internal plastic heel counter. The liner itself has plenty of padding and is this smooth synthetic leather material, which isn't typically my preference. I would have definitely preferred kind of like a softer, almost microfiber texture, but this does feel quite good, and from a durability standpoint, it'll also hold up really nicely. And again, the insole, fully removable. This is not something we typically see from Adidas at this price point. This is where they usually cheap out, but you can see you get a really nice insole here. It has this soft microfiber liner on the surface, and it's made from a single layer of this really dense, really high quality white foam. It's the type of insole you'd expect to find on a $250+ football boot. Which brings us to the base of the new Gloro, where you're not actually going to find anything new. This is a sole plate and stud pattern that we have seen on past Copa Gloro models, but realistically, I have no problems with it at all. It's a single piece of plastic, pretty straightforward in terms of how it bends. It just has a nice flexible, natural sensation to it, kind of what you would expect from a football boot of this type. It works well with the flexibility and softness of the upper. And as far as the stud pattern is concerned, it's the same general layout we are used to seeing from the Adidas brand. But again, in comparison to something like the Nike Premier, for example, the studs are a smidge longer and a little bit more aggressive despite still being conical in shape. This obviously compares very closely to what you're going to get on the New Balance 442. Those studs, again, being a little bit more aggressive, but again, for $100, this sole plate and stud pattern definitely punches above its weight. Which, speaking of weight, how much does the new Copa Gloro weigh compared to an equally as blue Nike Premier 3? Both in the same size, 9.5 US. We're going to weigh them in real time, starting off with the Nikes, and you can see that they weigh in at 8.75 ounces, the equivalent of 248 grams. Remember those numbers. We'll change the scale back to ounces, and we'll throw on the Gloros, and you can see that they weigh in at 10.5 ounces, the equivalent of 298 grams. So you're talking about a weight difference of 50 grams, which is quite significant. The Gloros do feel substantially heavier and just in general bulkier overall, both the upper as well as the sole plate. I don't think you're buying this style of football boot for the sake of having something that feels exceptionally light on your feet. But in comparison to the Nike Premier, and certainly in comparison to the 442, which is even lighter than the Premiers, the Copa Gloro definitely has the most weighted feel to it. The fit and feel on feet, for me, is really where the new Copa Gloro stands out. It's such a comfortable pair of football boots, the full leather upper with the traditional U-throat tongue construction, the laces running right down the middle, allows for great adjustability. The cow leather upper through the entire foot feels incredibly soft, and I think they nailed the shape. Overall, it's a shallower depth to the entire foot, particularly through the midfoot. So if you have exceptionally wide feet, you might actually find that they'll fit you, but the sides of the upper won't come up high enough. Again, it's not that the boots are narrow, they just made the depth relatively shallow, which I'm not sure why. Maybe to save on material, I couldn't really tell you. For me, it's not an issue, but if you're somebody that had a really wide foot or perhaps a particularly high arch, you might find that the way the tongue sits on top of your foot will be a little bit weird, and that you might have these small gaps between the edge of the tongue and the side of the upper. So something to be aware of, but in general, they feel really good. I would describe the fit as kind of relaxed, where this is the perfect blend of kind of the more modern shape, but also a more old school shape, in that they don't feel like they're squeezing your feet, but still feel very secure, snug, and close to your foot. So it really is that slipper-like sensation that you'll hear a lot of people describe the feel of the ideal pair of football boots. They're just super comfortable all the way through. Like I said, from a width perspective, plenty of width, but relatively shallow along the sides and the midfoot, so something to be aware of. And as far as sizing is concerned, I'm wearing these in my usual size 9.5 US, and the fit and the length is perfect. So if you are looking to get a pair for yourself, I would strongly recommend going true to size in order to achieve the best possible fit. So in conclusion, when it comes to value for money, if you are looking to get a pair of football boots from the Adidas brand for $100 or less with a coupon code, there is simply no better option than the new Copa Gloro. With that said, if you're less concerned about what brand your boots are and more concerned about the best value for money option that you can get, period, in this kind of simple, classic leather football boot category, should you spend $100 on these, $110 on the Premiers, or $130 on the 442s? Well, simply put, if you just want the best of these three, it's definitely the New Balance boots, but that shouldn't be too surprising given the fact that they are $30 more expensive. They're lighter, they're better quality leather, they're just better football boots overall. But in comparison to the Nike Premier 3, as much as I really like this football boot, and certainly in comparison to the Copa Gloro, it's lighter and does in fact have kangaroo leather for those that care about that particular detail. When it comes to fit and overall comfort, I just much prefer the feel of the Copa Gloro, and honestly, the more padded feel to the leather upper, I think just feels better on the ball than that of the Premier. Is this very much a personal preference thing? Absolutely. If you like a thinner feel, you might actually prefer the Premier, but if you're looking for something that has a little bit more of that padded leather sensation on the ball, the Copa Gloro is definitely the way to go. And as far as value for money is concerned, they're both really good options, but I'd make an argument that as long as you don't really care too much about the weight, the Copa Gloro is the better deal.